Well, this is going to be a thrill. Juan Williams, the senior political analyst at Fox News, a long storied history. I mean, dude, 23 years at the Washington Post. And I have to admit, first of all, let me bring Juan on. Juan, thank you for coming on. I appreciate you very much for coming on the Chris Krok Show on News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. It's a pleasure to have you.
Are you kidding? It's a pleasure to be with you, Chris. I'm telling you, and I've got to tell you, I'm making excuses for you because your baseball team beat up my baseball team today 6-0. So, but I'm delighted to be with you.
Me too, and you know, also it's like I love who you are as a person and your genteelness. But oh my gosh, as a very conservative person, it makes my skin crawl. You know, it's like when I hear you, like I know. But that's what it is. You know, we go back and forth and we debate and all that. But what's amazing is what we can agree on with what happened at NPR. Well, tell me, let's start with which you prefer. Do you want to start with your case, or do you want to talk about Yuri Berliner, the business editor who just came out and called out NPR for how leftist it is?
Well, I think that's the news, don't you, Chris? I mean, I think people, the listeners at WBAP should know that this guy, who's a veteran editor at NPR about 2 weeks ago, offered an insider critique in which he said NPR is no longer a place with an open, honest platform for news, that they were so left-leaning that they were corrupt. And he wrote this. He said he tried to get the attention of people in-house. Nobody would listen to him, so he just went and he wrote this in a Substack letter. And then, of course, everything broke out because then the conservatives on Capitol Hill, who have long viewed NPR as a liberal bastion, said, why does the government fund NPR? We shouldn't be funding them. And then there were lots of arguments. It seems to have died down now, but what the consequence was that inside NPR you had lots of people, you know, shooting arrows at each other, a lot of backstabbing and a lot of nastiness. And finally, Berliner was forced to resign, I think.
You don't think, Juan, that he resigned because, like, this is not a good place for him? You think they pushed him out and he was allowed the chance to resign?
I think that's right. I mean, you know, it's a lot. You know how these things go with resignations, and I want to spend more time with my family and all that. But you know, but what struck me is the number of people, including prominent, you know, well-known personalities at NPR, who said Berliner was not only wrong, but that he had essentially tarnished the NPR brand for his own purposes. So it got personal, and I think it was to the point where he understood there was no going back.
Juan Williams, senior political analyst at Fox News and former, the job title with NPR, what was your exact job title when you were with them?
I was an afternoon talk show host at Talk of the Nation. That show no longer exists. For 2 years, and then I was the senior national correspondent. Yeah,
so with your case, now there was a listener, an NPR listener who listens to us and NPR, and I was talking to him about this, and I wonder what your thoughts are on this leftist kind of, this tremendous left bias within NPR that Yuri Berliner wrote about, even though he is a liberal himself, a proud liberal, he said, which is like, it doesn't matter, Juan. By the way, this groupthink, it does not matter if you're one of them. If you speak out, I guess they eat you alive.
Well, you know, in my case, you know, Chris, you are being polite. You are being gentle. I mean, they call me a psycho and a bigot and a jerk in public. I mean, this was in the course of telling me I'm fired without even hearing me say, hey, here's what I said. I didn't say what they were so upset about on NPR. I said it on Fox News. But, I mean, it just tells you they didn't have an open spirit, to quote Yuri Berliner. They didn't want to hear from me, and they were willing to demean me, to mock me in public, to damage me, like it was a sport, like they were just like, you know, poking an animal that was injured. I really, you know, it's unbelievable to me, even looking back.
Juan, what did you say? And now you've had so much time to look back on that. What did you say that set them off, and what did you respond with about that when they made these allegations? How did that all play out?
Well, Chris, I don't know how old you are, but if you are of at least a certain age... I
remember, but
okay,
all the details.
Okay,
go ahead.
Yeah, so I was on Bill O'Reilly's show, and Bill O'Reilly at the time was the top Fox News host. I think he was the television's top host. Anyway, Bill and I were discussing whether or not the government should allow a mosque to be built. The government of New York City, not the federal government. Government of New York City should allow a mosque to be built near Ground Zero in New York City.
I remember that.
And so, I said to Bill, look, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be honest with you. When I go to the airport, this is in the aftermath of 9/11, and I see people dressed in Muslim garb, I get nervous. And then I went on to say, but of course everybody goes through the magnetometer. Everybody is searched. They're random searches. And at that point, I think, you know what? People should be allowed to travel. Americans have their rights, travel as they will. But I do get nervous. I also added, if the zoning restrictions don't say that you can't have a church, a synagogue, or a mosque there, then I think you just have to say, that's the rules. That's the way we have zoned this city. Anyway, that's what I said. Now, I hope, Chris, as we're talking this evening, you don't think, Juan's crazy. How could he have said that?
Oh, you're being honest about your feelings at the time this went down. And for that, they how bad did it get with the way you were treated? I mean, I'm looking at some of the things that you wrote about in your column. I tweeted it out at you, and with the column attached from The Hill that Juan just wrote that came out a couple days ago on the 29th. It's on my Twitter feed. But, they dumped me, you said, similar arrogance led a PBS host to cancel an invitation that sent me back to speak at a show about race relations. He canceled it. He said I was the wrong kind of black American due to my insistence on questioning left-wing orthodoxy. What?
Look, dude, this is serious. This is like a disease in the mind right now on the left. I mean, it's unbelievable to me that you said at the start of our interview today, when you see me on Fox, sometimes you think, oh, no, here we go again. I don't want to hear what this guy is saying.
It makes my skin crawl,
okay. Yeah, but Chris, you know what? God bless you. You're at least willing to say, I'm going to hear what this idiot has to say, because you know what? At least I know what those people are thinking, or the other side, or whatever.
Yeah.
NPR did not have Chris's open mind. Even as you are saying, I don't know about this guy, they didn't even have that. Immediately, they fired me. They wouldn't even discuss why they were firing me. They immediately said that somehow I had violated their orthodoxies, their way of thinking. I mean, what kind of country is that?
Juan, and I guess you speak volumes about like how saying, look, even me, who we probably wouldn't vote 9 times out of 10 the same way, but yet you're like, look at Chris. Chris is open to this, and Chris sees my side, but these guys won't. So when you talk about that, how does this happen? How do you think? Because these people vote the way you do at NPR, typically, right? I mean, left, Democrat, right? And so how does this happen in an environment like that? How does that happen? What is you worked there for a while and were a major part of NPR before getting fired for saying the truth about how you felt. Even as a black man, a Democrat liberal, you were told you were supposed to hide your feelings on things at a time when everybody was thinking lots of stuff about 9/11 and Muslim folks. So how does that happen? How do they get this kind of groupthink and this, like you said, like a disease?
Well, Chris, the thing is, as I think you can tell from talking to me, I don't try to hide or spin you. I just tell you what I think, and I let you judge me and judge my ideas and my reporting for what it's worth. And I think that's the way we should be with each other. So the problem with that for them was, even as you say, Juan, you're more liberal than I am, than Chris is. For them, I was too conservative. And
that was back then, Juan, right? Like now, aren't they even worse now, you think?
Oh, I think it would be much worse now. First of all, I don't think I've changed in terms of saying, I don't care if you're on the left or right. I'm going to tell you what I think straight.
Yes.
And I'm going to tell you that if I think you're playing a game with me or playing a game with the audience because you want the audience just to hear certain lines of thought, or you want to just say to the audience is right and everybody else is wrong, I'm going to say, hey, Chris, don't call me, because I'm not going to do that. And at NPR, I think that the way they did it, which is I think what your question is trying to elicit from me, is that they didn't want to hear from somebody like me who was, interested in, let's say, Justice Thomas, who was a black conservative on the court.
So
they didn't want to hear from somebody who would say, I'm going to sit down and talk with Thomas Sowell, who's a black conservative economist, about how the government relates to poverty and deals with poverty. They didn't want to hear about somebody who would say, gee, I think that when we look at America's public schools and we see the fact that they are overwhelmingly failing poor minority students, that maybe we should question whether or not we're approaching educating our children in the wrong way. Chris, I don't think that's necessarily something you can label conservative or liberal, Republican, or Democrat. You say, hey, Juan Williams is trying to have an honest conversation, and he's looking in the way that I would like my reporters to look for answers.
Exactly. I agree. And there's some possible total agreements between you and me and lots of people on the educational thing. Freedom for people, African Americans, and all people in the city that are locked into these failing schools. Juan Williams, a senior political analyst at Fox News, among many other things, and opinion contributor at The Hill, and his brand new column called NPR Really Would Be Better Off Without Federal Money, which is refreshing. I want you to tell me more about that coming up next. But I also wanted to ask you about the bias that Yuri Berliner was talking about, who's now the former NPR business editor, about the Russia collusion stuff was never, covered after it came out that it was not accurate. That Schiff was the only person to come on and was their correspondent, basically, as he said, for this whole thing. And then the dossier stuff and the laptop stuff. Can you stand by for one more segment with me, Juan?
Absolutely, Chris.
Thank you. I'm enjoying it very much. Juan Williams, senior political analyst, Fox News. Great column. NPR would really be better off without federal money. It's on my Twitter feed, at Chris Krok Show, at Chris Krok Show, ChrisKrok. And Juan, of course, you can find his Twitter feed, Twitter, right there on mine. In fact, I'll even plug it. It is right there. It is at the Juan Williams. Continuing with Juan coming up next on the Chris Krok Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Make it a preset. Juan Williams, senior political analyst at Fox News, in his column from The Hill on the 29th a few days ago. I just retweeted it on my Twitter feed, at Chris Krok Show, ChrisKrok. You can follow him on Twitter at the Juan Williams. Juan, thank you for joining me for a few more minutes on the Chris Krok Show tonight. I appreciate you very much. Long time in coming, and you're a family man, and you love your family, and you always advocate for families. And that was one of the things that really bonded me to you way back when. Tweeted out to you, you followed me, and it was very kind. And that's one thing, we can agree on. The other things too, but thanks for coming on again tonight. I appreciate it.
Man, it's good to be with you, Chris. You just said something that touched me. You talked about the family stuff, and I just had a birthday, and I was thinking to myself, as you get on in the years...
Happy birthday.
Thanks, Chris. As you go on in years, you think, what do I stand for? What have I built? Who am I? And the answer for me came back to just what Chris talked about, folks. It was family. It was like, I have kids, now I have some grandkids, but it's watching your family and saying, when I was a young guy, I didn't know if I could support myself. I didn't know how life would go. I didn't know if I could really, make a marriage work, because, you're working with another person as another individual. You got to respect them. I mean, there's so much and you think, as you get on in the years, you think, I'm so proud of that.
Yes.
Apart from all the work that we do professionally, I think in some ways, at the end, you look at people you love and you hope they love you, and, have you helped other people grow and succeed in life?
Amen. Now, NPR, your column is all about how NPR really would be better off without federal money, which is a wonderful headline to most of us. One of the things you write here is, this mess is not journalism. It's a distortion for political purposes. We had a caller who called in one night. This is a famous call to my producer and I, and he's an NPR listener and a WBAP listener, and he called in and he's like, he didn't understand why they're so biased, and he's like, no, I think they're great, and I listen to both sides. I'm like, yeah, okay. So I said, why didn't they report the Russia collusion after it was totally disproven? Oh, I don't know. I'm not so sure about that. And I said, why didn't they report the dossier was all fake? Well, I don't know. I'm not so sure about that. Why did they have Adam Schiff as their correspondent, as Yuri Berliner said, for their only source on all this stuff, which is all fake and lies? And then, I don't know. And then the last thing I said, well, the laptop. The laptop was real, and you guys hid it, and you never shared that. There was, and he's, I'm not sure. So I said, maybe the reason why you're not sure about this is because you don't hear about it on NPR.
Well, that's the heart and soul of it. I think that's right. So in other words, it's topic selection. It's issue selection. It's a very filtered view of the news. Now, I got to say, in the American environment we live in, where everything is social media and algorithms, there's a lot of that goes on. People go to, as a liberal or a conservative, a black person, a Latino person, a rural person. People pick things they like and they go, and then all of a sudden you see news that fits your pre-existing opinions and thoughts start flowing into your inbox, and all of a sudden that's the world you live in. And I think for NPR it's like that. When you talk to them about something like, hey, what happened on that collusion case, they'll say, well, Russia was interested in the election. No, you say, wait a second, what about collusion? That was the grand charge, collusion. Was there collusion? No. No evidence. And they say, well, yeah, but Russia was interested. And I'd say, you know what? Tell the story. Just tell the story.
Amen. So, Juan Williams, I appreciate you very much, and I hope it's not the last time, and I hope it's the first of many other times down the road that you come on with us. We appreciate you very much. We're a proud Fox News radio affiliate. And Juan Williams, of course, we catch you all the time on Brett Baer's show in the afternoon and all over the place, and it's always a joy to see you, even though I don't agree with you 90% of the times. You're a gentleman, and you're well appreciated, sir. Thank you for coming on tonight. I appreciate you.
I like you, Chris, and I certainly appreciate your audience at WBAP. Thanks for being a Fox affiliate.
You're welcome, friend. Thank you so much, Juan. Take care, brother. There he goes. What a great time. I knew it would be fun. I like the guy a lot, actually, as a person, and it's hard, but my skin crawls with the position sometimes, but it's okay. He's the right kind of cat to disagree with,